Have you ever looked at someone you thought you knew inside and out, only to realize, in a single fragile moment, that you'd never really known them at all? That night started like any other Thursday. The city outside our Brooklyn apartment pulsed with life, sirens echoing, laughter spilling from the bar below, and the hum of distant traffic blending into the rhythm of our routine. Inside, the light from the kitchen lamp was soft and golden, washing over the half-empty wine glasses between us. Lauren sat across from me, her knees pulled to her chest on the couch, her oversized sweatshirt swallowing her frame. She had that look she wore when something heavy was pressing against her chest, like words she didn't know how to say were piling up behind her ribs. "Can I ask you something weird?" she said. Her voice was quiet, careful. I smiled, expecting another one of her late-night hypotheticals about life or love, or the meaning of happiness. But the question that followed wasn't one of those. What does a woman taste like? The words hit me harder than they should have. For a moment, I thought she was joking, but she wasn't smiling. Her eyes, clear, searching, a shade too serious, were waiting for an answer I didn't have. I laughed anyway, because laughter felt safer than silence. "Where did that come from?" She shrugged, tracing her thumb along the rim of her glass. "Ethan asked me if I've ever wondered about it. I said no, but I don't know. I can't stop thinking about it now." Ethan, her boyfriend of 3 years, the one she used to talk about like he was her forever. Lately, even his name made her shoulders tighten. Something inside me shifted then. A flicker of unease. Or maybe something else, something I didn't want to name. "Do you ever think about things like that?" she asked. Her voice was smaller now, more vulnerable. I looked at her, really looked, at the way her fingers fidgeted with her bracelet, the nervous tilt of her head, the soft line of her mouth when she waited too long for an answer. "Sometimes," I said finally, "but I don't think it's about curiosity. It's about connection. Sometimes, you just want to understand someone completely." Lauren nodded slowly, her eyes still locked on mine. And in that look, I felt it, the quiet, dangerous shift in gravity between us. The air grew heavier, charged with something unnamed. She smiled faintly. "You always make things sound deeper than they are." "Maybe they already are," I said. That was the first time I realized something between us had changed. I just didn't know yet how far it would go, or how much it would cost. When I first moved to New York, I wasn't looking for connection, just cheap rent and a place where the walls didn't echo too much. Lauren's Craigslist ad had seemed practical, clean, quiet, female, roommate preferred. I wasn't either of those things, but she chose me anyway. In the beginning, our lives ran on parallel tracks. She had her steady job as a graphic designer at a Manhattan firm, her boyfriend Ethan, her morning green smoothies, and her color-coded closet. I was a freelance writer, juggling 3 unpaid articles, surviving on caffeine, and forgetting laundry, until it formed a small ecosystem on my floor. But the thing about living with someone is, you can't help but absorb the rhythm of their existence. Her calm started to soften my chaos, and my spontaneity pulled her out of her own monotony. Slowly, the space between us blurred. We became each other's quiet. Movie nights turned into shared confessions. Laughter stretched into long silences, and comfort became something unspoken. Then there was Ethan, polite, predictable, and emotionally absent. I'd see the way Lauren's eyes dimmed whenever he texted. Sometimes she'd read his messages out loud, half laughing, but not really amused. "He says I'm distant," she told me once, while washing dishes. "Are you?" I asked. "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe I'm just tired of being the only one trying." There was no bitterness in her tone, only exhaustion. The kind that grows from trying to love someone who stopped meeting you halfway. One evening, after another hollow fight with Ethan over the phone, she came into my room, and sat on my bed. Her eyes were red, but she was quiet. She looked around the mess, my notebooks, my half-drunk coffee, my unmade sheets, and exhaled. "You make chaos look comforting," she said softly. I smiled. That's because I never clean up what hurts. Something about that made her laugh. The kind of laugh that escapes before you can stop it. But when it faded, her gaze lingered. It wasn't the look of someone seeing a friend. It was a pause too long, a moment too tender. From then on, things shifted in small ways. She'd brush past me in the kitchen, and I'd feel her hesitation before she stepped away. Our conversations carried undercurrents, questions left unasked, truths we both pretended not to notice. I told myself it was harmless, just curiosity, just loneliness, but deep down I knew better, because late at night, when I heard her footsteps pause outside my door, I wasn't sure which of us I wanted to move first, and that was the beginning, the slow unraveling. Neither of us could stop. The question she asked that night didn't disappear. It lingered like perfume in the air, faint but impossible to forget. We never spoke about it again, not directly, but it became the silent pulse beneath everything we did. Lauren started staying up later. Sometimes I'd find her in the kitchen at midnight, sitting cross-legged on the counter, scrolling through her phone. Other times, she'd wander into my room just to talk, her hair loose, her voice softer than usual. She'd ask questions that felt too personal, but I answered them anyway. "Have you ever been with someone you knew you shouldn't want?" "Yes," I'd say. "More than once." "Did it scare you?" Every time. Those conversations became a kind of quiet addiction, half confession, half dare. We never touched, but the air between us began to feel alive. Ethan came by less often. When he did, their voices carried down the hallway, sharp, restless, breaking into fragments of the life they used to have. After he'd leave, she'd find me in the living room, pretending to read. She never said much, but she didn't need to. The silence told me everything. One night, after another fight with him, she sat next to me on the couch, still wearing his sweatshirt. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying anymore. "I hate how small I feel with him," she said quietly. "Like I'm always apologizing for needing something he doesn't understand." I hesitated before answering. "Maybe you're not asking for too much. Maybe you're just asking the wrong person." She looked at me then. Really looked. The kind of look that stops time for a heartbeat. I felt it in my chest. That impossible pull towards something I shouldn't want. We didn't say anything after that. The movie kept playing, the sound low and distant. Our shoulders brushed once, then again, and neither of us moved away. The room felt charged, fragile, like one wrong word could shatter it completely. She broke the silence first. "Do you ever wish you could just forget the rules?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, because I already knew my answer. From that night on, every small gesture carried meaning. The brush of her hand when she passed me the coffee, the way her voice softened when she said my name, the quiet pauses that filled the spaces between laughter. We were circling something dangerous, pretending it wasn't there. And though I told myself we could stop whenever we wanted, I think we both knew. We already hadn't. It happened on a night that wasn't supposed to mean anything. Rain tapped gently against the windows, and the city felt far away, muted, almost forgiving. Lauren had ordered takeout, but neither of us had eaten much. The air in the apartment was heavy with things unsaid. She sat on the floor beside the couch, her knees pulled close, a blanket draped over her shoulders. The soft light from the lamp drew gold through her hair, and for a moment, I caught myself memorizing her. Every quiet detail, every pause between breaths. "You ever feel like you're living someone else's version of your life?" she asked suddenly. I looked at her, unsure if she wanted an answer or just silence. "Every day," I said. She smiled faintly, a tired, knowing smile. I used to think I knew who I was with Ethan. But lately, I look at him and I don't recognize the woman I've become. I feel like I'm shrinking inside his love. There was a tremor in her voice, soft but steady, like something finally cracking open. I moved closer, careful not to break the moment. Maybe you just outgrew the space he gave you, I said. That's not your fault. Her eyes lifted to mine, searching, fragile. Then why do I feel guilty for wanting more? Because you were taught to settle, I whispered. The silence that followed was alive, unsteady, trembling, full of everything we'd tried to ignore. I could hear her breathing, shallow and uncertain. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. I keep thinking about that question I asked you. That night, I felt my pulse catch. Lauren, she didn't look away. I wasn't asking what it felt like for anyone else. I was asking what it would feel like for me. The honesty in her voice undid me. There was no calculation, no pretense, just truth, raw and trembling. I should have pulled back. I should have said something rational, something that would save us both. But instead, I did nothing. I just let the moment breathe, let it grow until it swallowed every line we'd drawn. When she reached for my hand, it wasn't impulsive. It was inevitable. Years of loneliness, confusion, and quiet yearning condensed into one fragile act of connection. And in that stillness, I understood what she'd been searching for all along. Not desire, not rebellion, just the feeling of being seen without judgment. The world outside kept moving. The rain kept falling. But inside that tiny Brooklyn apartment, something irreversible shifted. We didn't talk about what it meant. Not that night. We just sat there, caught between guilt and wonder. Two people finally standing on the truth they could no longer run from. The morning after felt unreal, like waking inside someone else's memory. The rain had stopped, and sunlight spilled through the blinds in fractured stripes across the living room floor. Everything looked the same, our coffee mug still on the table, her blanket still draped across the couch. But something between us had shifted. Irreversibly, Lauren was already awake, sitting by the window, legs pulled close, her gaze lost somewhere past the skyline. For a moment, I just watched her, quietly tracing the outline of what we'd become overnight. Two people who had crossed a line neither of us could uncross. Hey, I said softly. She turned, her expression unreadable. Hey, silence stretched between us. Heavy, awkward, familiar. She finally exhaled. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I know, I said. Neither did I, but that wasn't entirely true. Somewhere deep down, I'd felt it coming for weeks. Maybe we both had. She ran her fingers through her hair, staring at the floor. Ethan called last night. I didn't answer. Her voice wavered, caught between guilt and relief. I don't know what to tell him, or myself. I wanted to comfort her, but the words stayed trapped behind everything we weren't supposed to feel. You don't have to decide anything right now, I said. Sometimes clarity takes time. She looked up at me then, really looked, and I saw it in her eyes. The weight of understanding, the fear of what it meant. For the rest of the day, we moved around each other carefully, like strangers, relearning the limits of a shared space. The world outside returned to its rhythm, but inside, every sound felt magnified. The clink of a spoon, the rustle of fabric, the sound of her breathing when she thought I wasn't listening. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind replayed everything. Her voice, her laughter, the quiet confession that had broken us open. And beneath it all, one thought kept circling back. Love isn't always about possession. Sometimes it's about awakening something you didn't know you needed. In the weeks that followed, things changed quietly. Ethan became a ghost in conversations, then disappeared altogether. Lauren and I still shared the same apartment, but our friendship had taken on a fragile stillness. Neither regret nor continuation, just an unspoken understanding that some moments can't be undone. One evening, she came home early from work. She paused by the doorway, gave me a faint, knowing smile, and said, "Thank you for not judging me. I wanted to say more, but maybe silence was enough, because what existed between us didn't need to be defined. It had already done what it was meant to do. Reveal who we really were when no one was watching. And even now, when I think about that night, I don't see it as a mistake. I see it as the truth finally breathing.